Hey there, once again, it is time to learn why you are probably wrong about modes. I don't mean it in like an offensive way. Not at all. I'm still wrong every now and then. But it's time to bring all of this together. We've been going over all the modes, and this is the final lesson. It's the lesson that actually helps you, I don't know, like use them. Like we've learned all of them, so now it's time to like play with them. All that and more coming up. And intro. Hey there, as always, thanks for being here, and if you want to see more of this stuff, make sure you like, subscribe, and click the alerts button so that you see more stuff. So we've been doing an entire series all about guitar modes explained, and I'll actually put the playlist up there right now because we've gone through Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and the final one, Locrian. But you're probably wondering, how do I use modes? When do I use modes? How do I know if I'm using a mode or just like the major scale? And that's why we're here today. There are a few misconceptions about modes. And without fully understanding modes, what we tend to do is play those mode shapes, but we play them as part of the major scale. I'll explain what I mean by going backward a bit. So let's start thinking about the major scale. G major, right there on that third fret is where we'll start it, on that G of the low E string. Now remember, the scale itself only has 7 notes, and then they repeat, and some are the same octave, some are lower, some are higher, but it's the same 7 notes across the entire fretboard. So in order to really understand those and connect all of those across the fretboard, we use what we call positions. And there are 7 positions of the major scale. And with that, if you're a pattern brain person, that's also 7 separate patterns. Which, by the way, if you need a refresher on the positions of the major scale, I will link another playlist right up there where we go over the entire thing. But to summarize, when we're looking at the guitar and we're thinking of playing G major and the entire song is in G major, and we say start right here on that third fret of our low E string. And from there, we could start to play through position 1, position 2, position 3, and so on, continuing up the fretboard and just connecting, again, all of those same notes, but in different areas of the fretboard. What you may start to notice if you've been diving into the Modes Explained series is that those shapes are the same. They're the same as modes. And that's why we're all pretty darn confused half the time. And to give you a really good explanation of why that is, think simply. Everything we play is based on the major scale. The end. In fact, I and a lot of people don't really believe in things like minor scales. Because if you think about the 6th position of the major scale, it's the same exact shape and notes. And if you think about Aeolian as a mode, it's the same. It's just a different starting point, and here's the key, a different tonal center, and we'll get into that in a moment. But what I really want you to take away from the major scale positions to really use for your mode patterns is how they connect. So again, when I played through position 1, I went with a 3-5-7, 3-5-7, 4-5. If we look at that second note, remember we went 3-5. I know that my second position will start on that note. It's always just the next note in the sequence for the next position. So I know now that I can go up. And I know that I went in that run 5, 7, 8. So I know 7 is my starting point at position 3. And we connect all of the positions of the major scale in the same exact way. But what makes it a friggin' major scale versus a mode, darn it? Got real passionate on that one. Let me put it to you this way. The notes you're playing alone don't mean because if I'm playing through, let's say, a Phrygian mode, our third mode pattern that we learned, and there's nothing under it telling me where the tonal center is, it could really just be the third position of our major scale. What matters is what the heck is underneath. A lot of people call this a resolving tone. Some people call it a tonal center. In other words, what makes a major scale versus a mode is how those notes are interacting with what's under it. So if somebody was playing a G chord and I was playing that first position of G major going into the second position, I'm not playing modes. I'm just playing extensions of that same G major scale. In the same way that if somebody's playing G and I start the Phrygian shape all the way up here, I'm just playing the third position of the major scale. It's not a mode. But if we change that tonal center, that's where the magic is. So what I mean by that is, of course, we've been talking about doing this major scale starting on G, but let's kind of switch gears and start thinking in modes, right? Our Ionian mode, which is the same as the major scale, can start on that third fret with a G underneath, and you could play through all of those mode shapes and positions of that Ionian mode and be in G major. But if I have a G underneath and I play my Dorian here, and then I move to that second note I just played and I play the Phrygian pattern that we know, and I keep connecting all of those positions and patterns in the same way we did, just knowing that I'm starting with the second one on that G. You're officially now playing in G Dorian. Same goes for all of them. If you want to play in G Phrygian, just have a G underneath as your resolving tone and start your Phrygian on the third fret, and remember where you connect the next pattern and position, and so on. Again, what really matters here to understand the difference of tonal sounds versus scales is really what's underneath. What is that resolving tone? What are the chords? What are the bass lines? What are the riffs underneath? Where did they keep going back to? So if I have a riff that keeps going back to E, and I start putting all of my positions and patterns focused on E Lydian, perfect. I'm playing in modal tones. I'm playing E Lydian. But if I start my Ionian there or my major scale and connect the positions and patterns, I'm still just playing the major scale. So what I leave you with is the fact that you already know what's going on if you know your major scale. For everything, honestly, including the patterns and shapes for all of your modal writing. It just matters what that resolving sound is in the background, that tonal center, and how that note impacts every interval of your pattern that you're playing. Hey, hopefully this darn thing has been extremely helpful. I really hope so, and valuable. And if so, make sure you like, you subscribe, you click the alerts, and feel free to share as well. And let me know if you have any other questions about the wonderful world of modes.